While Phil's men reorganised, John Geddes and C Company were now also on their way forward. It was now dawn, and reaching cover in the Gorse Gulley meant crossing open ground in full sight of Argentinian mortar and machine gun teams.
So we were desperately running towards the Gorse Gulley, not in any formation. There was patrols from the company everywhere, to the left, to the right, just galloping forward, trying to make some ground, trying to stay in dead ground as we're moving. We're moving hard, we're moving fast. There was machine gun fire, rifle fire, mortars left, right, behind us, in front. How we weren't all killed, I'll just never know. We heard the shrill whistle of a mortar round. That was our signal to hit the deck, get down, and the mortar landed right in between the patrol. We all looked at the bomb, saw the smoking tailpipe, and thought, why the hell hasn't it exploded? We just got up and started running again.
John's company were on their way to support A Company, whose advance had stalled against heavy Argentinian resistance in the narrow Gorse Gulley. Colonel H had also gone forward into the gully, impatient to see for himself what the hold-up was. In the dawn light, Phil Neame now spotted enemy movement along the nearby shore.
So behind me, there's you can see the shoreline. I suppose we'd been here about 20 minutes when some of my Toms over in that direction spotted these Argentinians, a steady trail of Argentinians working their way down the shoreline. People we'd obviously missed in the dark further back in earlier attacks, trying to get back to their own lines. I put two and two together quite simply and thought, well, if the Argentinians can work their way down the shoreline there, then maybe we could. So I offered that suggestion to H over the radio and got a fairly abrupt answer back, just to sort of stay off the net.
The activity on the shoreline continued, so Phil again requested permission to move.
And, once again, the answer came back, no, there's a lot going on here, I'm very busy, just leave me to it, get off the net. To have my suggestion, rejected a second time was very frustrating, I think.
What Phil didn't realise at the time was that he had a better view of the battlefield as a whole than his own CO. Worse, they now had to cross open ground, without the cover of darkness.
Very clearly, now when you look at this and the position we were in, the extensive fields of view available, the very little cover available, the ball game had undoubtedly swung back in their favour in a big way. Having had the second rejection for my suggestion, I took a view that actually nothing was going to change around here for probably another hour. And that it was going to be a bloody long day, quite frankly. So I told the blokes to, get their packs off or get the webbing off and get a brew on. It was going to be a much longer day than had been initially planned.
Then suddenly, events in the Gorse Gulley went from bad to worse. Over the radio came the coded signal, "Sunray is down." It meant the commanding officer, Colonel H. Jones, had been killed. The battle for Goose Green had taken a deadly turn. During the battle, Phil Neame never saw for himself the situation at the time H. Jones died. Now he joins some of his former colleagues to try to gain an insight into the confusing events in the Gorse Gulley 30 years ago. He and former B Company commander John Crossland joined Dare Farrar Hockley, commander of A Company, who were pinned down here. It's the first time they've been together on the battlefield since 1982.
It's just about light here. Just about light.
Yeah.
And it started with a cry of one or two Argentinians challenging. And then, away we went.
The gully is almost unchanged, and debris from the battle and the remains of Argentinian trenches still litter the slopes. The fighting was so intense that the gorse was set on fire and burned for weeks afterwards.
None of us, if I recall, had any idea that there was a company position on the top of this hill.
Yeah.
It simply had not been part of the orders procedure. So having crossed the fence down there, suddenly a couple of Argentinian cries came out.
It's daylight by then as well.
Yes, just daylight coming up. We push up into the Gorse Gulley. We take 1 or 2 casualties crossing the fence line, our first death, and then we push on up there. Beyond the trenches that were taken either side immediately, we knew there was a machine gun at the top. We still had no idea what we were dealing with here, what size of position we were actually facing.
Yeah.
And lying out there, wounded, was my youngest soldier, Private Steve Tuffin. He'd been shot in the head, but he managed to remain conscious, and that was a tremendous effort. A number of soldiers wanted to go and give him first aid, and I said, absolutely not. A, it would draw attention to him in the killing area, but B, we would probably lose other soldiers in that process. It was right out in the open.
No doubt you'd try and call for fire support. Well, actually, we didn't have any.
Well,
by now we were pretty short of ammunition.
First thing I called for was artillery, but that didn't work. So then I thought, right, let's get the Harriers. They're on call. Very sorry, no Harriers, fog at sea. This was war as it is. The cavalry were not going to come over the hill, and it was down to us with what we stood up in and the weapon systems we had. Very gradually, we began to push out there. NCOs like Abels and Camp and so on, who were to distinguish themselves in the battle, ease their way forward, but other section commanders doing great work as well. Some casualties, some great work in recovering our wounded as the battle went on, but gradually grinding down the enemy.
Were there any positions up on the left side at all?
No, none at all.
Yeah.
The positions that Mark Coe found when he was at the top were fixed line machine guns running across the top.
Right. No troops there.
No, so they were, as I say, they were well over the top on this convex slope.
They were outside of the Gorse line.
They were 300-400 metres back. Here you had, if you like, the company aid post. Soldiers who were wounded being drawn in here, being attended to by the medics. Company sergeant major making sure all was well.
While Dare was pinned down, Colonel H came up into the Gorse Gulley to see for himself the situation.
Whereabouts were you talking to Colonel H?
Oh, here. I mean, he came across and was naturally anxious. His anxiety, which you can understand. We now had daybreak. We're an hour into daybreak. We have not taken this position, not that it was anyone that...
Still a long way to Goose Green.
Still a long way to Goose Green, but it was not a position that was actually in the orders, but never mind. You know, he's asking questions, how are we getting on? I want you to carry out a flanking attack. I said, Colonel, look, I've done that. This is the problem why we can't do it. He then wanted to send...
Was he unaware of these sort of fixed line machine guns, presumably?
No, he just arrived. So right, you know, why aren't we further out? I said, because there's a bigger enemy here we can deal with, and as you know, there's not an element of fire support you can give me. So then he wanted to send the mortar officer, Mal Worsley Tonks, up there to set up a fire base to bring in fire, and I said, if you send him up the gully, he'll die. It's as simple as that, and he agreed to bring him back. So I left him here, really, managing his battle, talking to the two of you, no doubt, and so on. Well, I was with the machine gun base and encouraging people to continue the excellent work they were doing in small groups, winkling away at the enemy, and we were engaged in a fierce firefight. Tragically, I saw my second in command, Chris Dent, killed to my left. There were other casualties which I was aware of but didn't see them, and eventually Corporal O'Toole, Jerry O'Toole, behind me said, "Sir, if you don't get out of this now, you aren't getting out." And with Private Day, we eased our way back down the hill. The battery commander shouts, "Dare come quickly, the colonel's gone round the corner." And I had no idea what he was talking about, none whatsoever. And I said, "You'll have to wait, we're in a firefight, and you know, I'll get to this when we can."
For reasons unclear, perhaps in exasperation to break the deadlock, Colonel Jones tried single-handedly to outflank the enemy positions that were pinning A Company down.
The tragedy in the end was that actually he makes his very bold lone charge at a particular point. For whatever reasons, he decided to do that. And of course, the next thing I saw of the colonel was lying, looked after by his bodyguard, up the re-entrant further round.
Sergeant Norman.
Sergeant Norman, absolutely, who'd obviously done his best for him in terms of all the first aid he could possibly give him. But we'd done a lot of first aid on the ship, if you recall, and I felt his pulse, that it was extremely weak, and he was incoherent, but I held his hand and talked to him until I thought he had died.
Hands on your heads! Up!
Out you get, guys. Out you get, Archie.
Out!
Come on, you need to be
Move it!
We'd been called forward by the TAC 1 as a support element. As soon as we cleared the open ground into this valley here, there was just a deathly silence. And then we started walking, and just looking for personalities that we knew. Very hard to tell them apart. You know, they were camouflaged. There was you know, the carnage of battle, burnt out gun trenches. The Gorse Gulley was on fire, caused by the white phosphorus, mortar rounds, etc. And people just sitting around in groups, in total shock. There wasn't a man there not in shock. I think we were all in shock. And I saw a good friend of mine, Jerry Toole, and we saddled up to him and kind of put my arm half round him. You know, you okay, mate? Stupid question. And that's when he said, you know, they're all dead. Of course, they weren't all dead. There was quite a few of both our friends had been killed that day. All laid out at the bottom of the gully, covered with ponchos. I walked over there and took a look into the ponchos and paid my final respects. We just felt angry. We hadn't had a decent action. The company hadn't, you know, C Company hadn't had a decent action by then. It was frustration, anger. It was just like a knot in the stomach. You know, we just felt useless. And Jerry summed it up. One word, one phrase I always remember: "Where the fuck was C Company?" And I was close to tears. But anger, frustration. We just really felt we'd let A Company down. You know, in my heart, I don't believe it, but you know, I just felt we could have done something more. The personalities you think of when you get older, you think about the personalities, the friends you lost, the relationships you could have built over the years, the lasting relationships you had with a lot of them, and that's life, that's soldiering. We live to fight another day.